All right, we're going to pick up the story of the wilderness at the very beginning of it. You go to Exodus chapter 16 for this. Now, Exodus chapter 14, if you read that, that's the story of the crossing of the Red Sea. That's where the people of Israel were they'd been living as slaves, but now God has finally delivered them on the Passover, right? The day after the Passover, they load up their donkeys and their carts, and they load up their sacks, and they take off. And as they get to the sea, all of a sudden the Egyptians are like, you know what? We changed our mind. We want them to stay as slaves. So the Egyptians come chasing after them, and the people of Israel are like, what are we going to do? Behind us is the enemy. Before us is the sea. We're going to perish. And then God does this really miraculous thing with Moses and Moses' rod, right? And the sea parts in two, and the children of Israel go walking across that. How cool would that have been? Like that experience. Like, can you imagine like walking across dry ground, like with the sea, with the water parted? I know what I'd have been doing. If I'd have been I'd have been sticking my fingers out and just kind of like, in a wall of water, however it was. It's going to, how cool would it have been to walk across that? Anyway, they walk across the Red Sea, then the sea comes back down. And you just think about the joy they were experiencing in that moment and what was going on in their hearts at that time. Right? There's a reason that chapter 15, the very next chapter after chapter 14, it's a song. It's like, we got to put to song the things that we're feeling right now. Because it wasn't just that they stopped being slaves. I mean, they stopped being slaves. And if that at all that had happened, right, Daenu, that would have been enough. But they didn't just stop being slaves. They plundered the Egyptians as they left. Like, it's not just we're not your slaves anymore. We get your gold too. And they're like loading up sacks of gold and, coming out with money in their pockets. And then it's not just that we cross the Red Sea. It's that when we crossed the Red Sea, the oppressors who would take us back into slavery, they perished. And it was kind of God's way of saying, he's like, not only am I taking you out of slavery, you're never going back there again. This is one of the most exhilarating experiences of their entire life. Probably the most exhilarating experience of their entire life. But then chapter 16 happens, and chapter 16 always happens. All of a sudden they're stopping, they look around, and somebody's like, hang on a second. Where are we going to get food? And that becomes a great concern. Everybody's like, yeah, where are we going to get food? And see, there's no Rosars, there's no Albertsons. They couldn't order pizza. There was no DoorDash. I mean, they could have ordered DoorDash.com, but they didn't have a cell signal. They're in the wilderness after all. There's no place for them to get provisions. And they realize, we're going to starve out here. And that's chapter 16. They go to Moses, like, Moses, we're going to starve out here. And they even went so far to say to Moses, chapter 16, verse 3, you should have left us as slaves. As great as it was to be done as slaves, you should have left us as slaves, because even like slavery is preferable to starving to death in the wilderness. See, that's one of the troubles of the wilderness, isn't it? The wilderness will convincingly work its way into your head, where it causes you to completely forget the incredible and even recent provisions of a God who sees you and loves you, and to forget them to such a degree that you are certain that you will never be happy again. The wilderness is masterfully persuasive. And I know a lot of people will read through Exodus and they'll read about the children of Israel grumbling about, and they'll look at them with an air of condescension. It's like, how could they not believe? After all God just did. I mean, look at chapter 14. He just brought them across the sea. What's the matter with these people? Well, I'll tell you what's the matter with these people. They're human. And humans, when they're in the wilderness can get up in their head and convince them that they're never going to make it through. Can't you relate to that? Haven't you been through your own wilderness experiences where you're looking at what's in front of you and you're like, I can't do this. I can't. I'm not going to make it through this. There's no way I could do this. And then God brings you through anyway. See, one of the lessons of the manna, we're going to get two lessons of the manna here this week. One of the lessons of the manna is that God provides even when we're disillusioned, right? Even when we're disillusioned, even when we're despairing, even when we do not believe that there could possibly be a way, God makes a way. Because you know what God does? He looks at Moses, he says, tell the people this. I'm going cloudy with a chance of meatballs on them. Yeah, food's literally going to fall out of the sky. It's literally going to fall out of the sky. Bread from heaven is what it said. And they just went out one day and they look up and there's bread falling out of the sky. It's like, oh, there's breakfast and lunch and dinner. Um, we don't really know what it was. That's actually what manna means. What is this? They didn't know what it was. They said it tasted something like a wafer made with honey. So I'm picturing like Honey Nut Cheerios or a Stroop waffle. Those are the two things I can associate with it there. Um, but God took care of them. He took care of them even when they didn't know that it was even possible for God to take care of them. And as we go back to what are we saying here in Feast of Tabernacles? Even in the wilderness, God provides. He provides. And when the wilderness gets up in your head and the wilderness gets in your heart and it convinces you, you ain't making through this, pal, God causes bread to fall from heaven. He says, I'm going to take care of you, even if you can't see a way through. Tonight, as you discuss things, or as you write down your own thoughts, maybe tonight's question should be, when was a time that I felt like I couldn't go on and God still took care of me? All right, blessings.